Welcome back to the Malt Miller YouTube channel, Homebrewers. Following on from our theme that we've had this last little while about getting into homebrewing, and also from last week's video where we talked about different methods of homebrewing, today Rob and I are going to be brewing a couple of batches of beer and we're going to be using malt extract.
So it's a funny old hobby, homebrewing.
It is.
You get a certain amount of customers that perhaps get gifted a beer kit, for example.
Yeah.
And they put beer kit on, they really enjoy it, and they make beer kits. That's absolutely fine.
Yeah, and they stay in that world, don't they, of making beer kits, because there's so many to choose from. Yeah. You really do have a huge amount of variety.
Well, and the quality of the beer kits now is like night and day different from what it used to.
Yeah, it's no longer like the 70s and a Boots tin of malt extract, right?
Exactly. But there are those who want to get involved in recipe formulation. They want to fine-tune their beers, and to a certain extent you can do that with a beer kit. You can use different dry hops, different yeasts, but want to get into the nitty-gritty of recipe formulation a little bit further, and one of the ways to do that is brewing from malt extract.
Yeah, and the thing about it, actually, it's exactly what I did, right? I started with a couple of beer kits. Then I moved on to kind of the stuff we're going to be talking about today, which is doing like partial mash and using malt extract to replace kind of like the base malt aspect of the recipe.
Yeah.
But the thing that excited me about it was that I was then delving into flavors and experiencing different ingredients that I hadn't got hands-on with when I was brewing beer kits.
It picks up your knowledge straight away.
Yeah.
You can do single hop, you can add different malts into your mini mash, but you can start to nail down your knowledge on what brings what flavour to a beer. It's a really handy thing.
The other thing that was really good, and actually this is sort of, I'm talking from my experience here, but we do see this, is that you start with a beer kit, you move on to something that uses extract, then you move into all grain. And by doing the in-between, like the partial extract kits, mini mash, that kind of stuff, you start to learn about the other processes because you're steeping grains. You're looking to mash those grains, which is something that you then potentially go on to do on a bigger scale when you dive wholeheartedly into all grain brewing.
I think at this point it's quite handy for us to talk about price points.
Yeah.
Now, generally, the closer the ingredients that you're using are to raw ingredients, as in the least they've been processed, that means the more you have to do on your brew day, but the less the ingredients cost, the less the batch will cost.
Yeah.
So the more that's done for you, it kind of naturally follows that actually that's going to be more expensive.
The ingredients, but generally speaking, mini mash kind of extract brewing in the methods that we're going to be doing today, you don't need as much in the way of equipment.
Exactly.
You don't need a dedicated mash tun or boil kettle or both, or an all-in-one system.
Yeah.
You can use, in most cases, stuff that you've got kicking around in your kitchen.
I would say definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
If you've got a fermenter already because you've already been brewing beer kits, then I'm sure that most people have got a stock pot in their kitchen that is big enough to be able to carry out the process that we're just about to do.
Let's have a look then at the different kind of extracts that are available, because it comes in a few different formats, right?
They're all sticky.
They are all very sticky.
Need to be handled with care.
Yeah, I mean, they are ultimately like concentrated wort.
That's exactly what they are, yeah.
Right, let's look at the kind of old school first one, which you've got over there, Rob, which is...
This is dry malt extract. So it's actually band dried. So they get the liquid malt extract, they spray it onto a hot band, turns into a powder. That's the powder. It
comes in like different colours as well. So by colour, that relates to the EBC, the colour of the finished beer. So you get like extra light and dark.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then over on the other side of things, we've got liquid malt extract, which is kind of like Rob said, it's exactly the same product that hasn't been dried, super sticky, straight out of the bag, but again comes in a variety of like colours, so that actually you can think about replacing base malts of different colour depending on the beer style that you're brewing. Now, in more recent times, the good people over at Muntons have gone a step further, haven't they?
Oh man, if this stuff had been available when I first started homebrewing and when I first started reading Brewing Classic Styles, which is based on extract brewing actually with all grain alternatives, these just weren't available. So to be able to buy malt extract in different varieties of malts is absolutely outstanding.
Yeah, I mean, these are fantastic. They're like 1.5 kilo tins and they come in a ton of different varieties. We've actually got
18, James, because I had to alter every one of them yesterday.
18 different varieties. We actually did some videos using this a couple of years ago, which I'll put a link up to here, where Reiki and you brewed a couple of beers, and they turned out fantastic.
Yeah, they could.
And why it's good is because you've got like variety specific. So for example, this one I've got here is Maris Otter light malt extract. You know, there's a Vienna one, there's a Munich, there's even a sour.
Yeah, there is, yeah. And just for making different beer styles, things like the oat and the wheat are really important, because to be able to make a New England style, for example, just using extract, that's fantastic.
And they also do hopped versions as well. So you can get unhopped, where you then get the option to put your own hop varieties in, but the hopped ones give you kind of like a set bitterness level as well.
Give you that baseline bitterness that you can either work on by boiling with hops or not, and then just dry hopping.
Yeah. So the world's your oyster really with this range of products. And as we said, you don't need as much in the way of equipment to get into this, and you're starting to then learn about ingredients in a way that maybe you don't get when you're solely brewing with beer kits.
Couple of tips when you're using the liquid malt extract. As we've said, it is super sticky.
Yeah.
So the best thing to do is to warm it up before you start getting it out, either the pouch or the tin.
Yeah, just like in a water bath.
Yeah, exactly that. With the dry extract, man, that stuff's sticky. If you try to add that to a pan of water that's already steaming, you're on a hiding to a sticky, horrendous.
Yeah.
So add it to warm water, but water that is not yet steaming.
Yeah. Right, that's enough on like the different varieties of malt extract, because everybody at home is keen to see what we're going to be brewing today. So let's clear the decks and talk about the recipes we're going to be making.
So we are both brewing really popular recipes from our website. James, you're brewing Oil for the Neck, which is our neck oil clone, which it sells bucket loads.
Yeah.
People absolutely love it. And I'm brewing Boy Taylor, which is a Timothy Taylor Landlord clone. Classic British style, also extremely popular.
Now it's worth noting, this is the first time we've done either of these, so they're slight interpretations on the all grain recipe, but everything going to plan, we should have two absolutely fantastic beers once they're all fermented.
Can't wait to try them, but before that, obviously we've got to make them, and we just need to explain a little bit about how mini mash works.
So the concept of a mini mash is kind of like you would with an all grain, full-size all grain batch. You're taking some of the grains that maybe you can't get from an extract, and you're steeping them for maybe 30-60 minutes in hot water around 65 to 70 degrees. You're allowing the conversion of the starches into sugar to take place, the extraction of the flavour, all of the unique things that you get from those steeping grains, which quite often are some of the speciality grains, or like crystal malts and that kind of stuff. Once you've done that, you boil it, you add hops if you need to get the bitterness or whatever flavours you're trying to extract. Then you've maybe got like 5 litres of boiled wort that you then mix with the extract and cold water to bring it up to your full volume.
Yeah, a few things in that. So hop utilization is a really important thing, and when you're all grain brewing, that hop utilization within a 23 litre boiling volume is going to be slightly different to what we're going to be boiling, which is somewhere between 5 and 10 litres. We will get different hop utilisation, and we absolutely know that. That's part of the fun of doing these two recipes to see how we go.
Right, come on in, Rob. Tell us what is in your... Oh, actually, it's probably worth noting, we're doing things a little bit different today. It's just so you can see Rob's face a bit more closely. What are we going to be doing today with your mash, your mini mash? What grains you got in there?
Yeah, these are my steeping grains. So I've got 30 grams of black malt, 50 grams of wheat malt, and 200 grams of light Munich malt.
Okay.
So I am going to cut that open. Now here I have got, now these are generally what's known as a hop sock, but actually they're interchangeable. You can steep grains in them or you can put hop pellets in them as well, and they do a reasonable job of keeping hop matter out of your final product. So I am going to do my absolute utmost to get this into this hop sock without spilling it everywhere.
Rob, would you benefit from maybe using a funnel?
No, I can do it like this, look James. So I've tied a knot in one end of this hop sock, obviously the end that's in the kettle, and I am going to get as much, if not everything, out of this bag. Yes. So now all I need to do, I want to give it as much space in this hop sock as possible. So I'm going to tie a knot as close to the end as possible. And by the way, this kettle's at 70 degrees with no heat on whatsoever, because I know that when I put my steeping grains in, it's going to drop the temperature, and what I want to do is keep this as close to 66 degrees for 1 hour. So I'm going to make sure all those grains, I'm going to dip it, I'm going to teabag it, make sure all those grains are soaking and all free flowing. I don't want them all bunched up, I want them as free flowing as possible, bearing in mind I'm sticking my fingers into 70 degrees water here. Actually, that is good to go. I can now put the lid on. We've also got this on an induction hob. Now this is just to completely replicate what you have got at home. 9 litres of water in here. We need to be able to boil that as well. There'll be some absorption from the grain. So when I take the grain out, that liquid's gonna reduce slightly, but it needs to be able to boil in here. We're good to go. I'm gonna set an hour timer, and I'm also gonna keep on coming back because I might need to top the heat up slightly. I wanna keep it as close to 66 as possible. Siri, set a 60-minute timer. No, that's 6 minutes. Siri, set a 60-minute timer. You're making me look like...
You're more than capable of doing that yourself.
Complete tool. Right, my hour's up. It's time for me to fish out my steeping malts. I'm just going to let that drain for a few seconds because I want all of that goodness out. Now, bit of a controversial one here, and in the brew in the bag community, squeezing the bag or not squeezing the bag was a massive discussion point, and always has been. I'm going to do a halfway measure.
So what, you're going to gently squeeze
I'm
it?
going to gently squeeze it.
A subtle squeeze?
A subtle squeeze. That is enough. Bosh. Done. I'm now going to boil this with my hop additions. So we're not actually up to the boil yet, but I'm already going to add my hops. So that's 30 grams of Solea and 30 grams of East Kent Goldings. Now, interesting point about these hops is I've got a kettle here, no hop filter, no nothing, just a simple tap on the front. I suspect that a lot of people watching this video, if they're going to try and repeat this, are going to be using just a standard stainless steel saucepan. That being the case, you're going to want to separate these hops out when they go into the fermenter. So my advice would be to pour this through like a standard kitchen sieve. That will take almost everything out of the what we call trub and hop matter out of the liquid that you're pouring into your fermenter.
We started these a little bit behind each other, so you're coming up
Why
to...
did we do that, James?
Well, because we're not very organised with this, and we've only got one induction hob. We didn't even have 2 lids for our kettles, so making use of a bucket blaster lid there. So I'm going to pull my grain bag out of this one as well. Get that down.
You
there.
can squeeze?
Of course, gently. Let's see if I can get this out.
Oh, very adept. Oh, okay.
That wasn't planned.
Okay, let's get...
Yeah, put that there. Right, little drainage, little squeeze. And I liked your little sort of rolling technique as well.
Yeah, it worked really well.
Yeah.
Just a quick note on these bags, they can actually be reused. So undo the knot, get rid of the grain. They're a bit of a bind to get all the grain out because it sticks in the little holes. However, they can be chucked in the washing machine.
Yeah, turn them inside out.
Turn them inside out.
Job done. So, because we've only got one induction hob, we are now going to have to put my plastic lid back on and wait until your boil's done.
Yeah.
So how long are you going to be boiling for?
Right, the recipe says to boil this for an hour, and I know about hop utilisation, and actually the boil says boil for 90 minutes. However, I know about hop utilisation and everything else. I know from prior experience that if I do a half an hour boil on this, we're going to be good.
Yeah, cool. So 30 minutes on yours, then we get mine on, boil that for 30 minutes, and maybe in the future look at buying another induction hob.
Yeah.
Yeah. You right, Rob?
Yes, hot break, sorted. If you've not done this before, this is called hot break. So the wort boils, you get a big foamy head on the wort. It raises up the boil kettle, and then eventually it kind of rolls over, and that's called the hot break. And that all of those proteins go back into the beer.
Yeah, but also if you're not careful, you might end up with a boil over. Yeah.
Don't end up with a boil over, because this is like sticky liquid. It's a nightmare to clean up.
We'd never want a boil over, would we, Rob?
No, we'd never want a boil over. Actually, what happens is every time I create foam in this boil, I'm losing possible head retention on my beer. So the least foaming, the better. I want it on a rolling boil, not massive amounts of foam boiling over.
What are you doing over there, Rob?
I'm cleaning the tap, aren't I? Because the last time Reiki used this, he didn't clean the tap out or take it apart and clean it. So just at the end of the boil here, I've got about 5 minutes to go. I've got a Pro Mix sachet here.
Yeah.
Now, this is a day of experimentation, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so.
It really is. So I'm putting the whole lot in. Now, actually, that is suitable for a 23 litre batch.
But we are making a 23 litre batch in total, but so the yeast nutrient side of it's the right amount.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine, but there's going to be way too much protofloc, but it'll be really interesting to see what it's going to do.
Right, so once your boil's done, we can then get mine on, get that boiling for 30 minutes. I've got a hop addition to go in there as well, 10 grams of Columbus.
Yep.
And whilst mine's boiling, we can go on to the next step with yours, which is getting it into the fermenter, right?
Yeah, what I've also got to bear in mind, though, is that I've chucked my hops in loose in here, and I've not got a sieve here to be able to sieve it out into the fermenter. So I'm going to take it off of the induction plate. I'm going to, what we call whirlpool it. So I'm going to whiz it around using the mash paddle here. I'm going to put the lid on and leave it to settle for 10 minutes. And then because I've got a tap on the kettle, I can drain it out the tap.
Ah, so exactly the same method that we use when we're doing bigger batches using our kettles.
Yep.
Now my recipe is a little bit more complex than yours, isn't it, Rob? So we've added the Pro Mix a few minutes ago, and I'm going to cut power. Now I've got to do a whirlpool. So a hop stand,
Yep.
Which if I was brewing on a bigger brewing setup, you know, I'd need to chill the whole volume of wort down to 80 degrees. I'm not going to submerge a wort chiller in this to cool it down to 80 degrees. I'm actually going to use some cold water because it doesn't really matter.
No, because we're diluting it anyway.
Yeah, so I'm going to use some cold water, which we've added sodium metabisulfate to as well to get rid of the chlorine, which is actually something we've done to all of our water so far.
Yeah, actually we've done no other water treatment than just removing the chlorine and chloramines.
Yeah, so I'm going to add this in. If you can give it a little stir and just keep an eye on the temperature gauge for me. It should come down reasonably quickly.
It's surprising, I've done this before, it's surprising how much cold water you need to add.
Right, that is at like 81, so I'm happy with that.
Boom.
And for this recipe, I've got, I think it's 36 grams now of Columbus, Centennial and Simcoe going in. Now I'm going to leave it for like 30 minutes, which is fine because we're going to give it a little spin, a little whirlpool as well, like we did on yours, just to get like the hot matter kind of into the middle. And then at that point, we'll be ready to transfer it.
Also, while we're doing that, we're going to want to do it with the lid on because although we're still at 80 degrees, I get nervous about leaving an open kettle at 80 degrees. So I'm going to wash and sanitize this lid because it's been down on that mucky old table and then pop that back on.
And there's nothing wrong with, he's running away, there's nothing wrong with being a little bit cautious at this point because you've already invested all this time, so you may as well invest a little bit more time in just making sure everything is clean and sanitary.
So it's time for me to add my malt extract, because I'm going to add the dry malt extract into the fermenter and then I'm going to drop the boiled wort on top of it.
Yep.
I think that's probably going to be the easiest thing to do. So take that off there. Obviously this has been not only cleaned but sanitized as well. We use Chemsan.
Yeah, no rinse sanitizer.
No rinse. It's been in there for about 20 minutes actually. Just rinse it around, make sure the entirety of the inside of that vessel and the tap is completely coated. Now we actually repack this spray malt here at the malt miller and we double bag it, so it's actually in 2 bags. This stuff flows almost like water.
Yeah.
So if I was just to dump it straight in, it would
Yeah. You'd have it all over your face, everything.
Yeah.
Right?
There's certain things that have got to be done with a little bit of care. And this is
Finesse.
Finesse is a great word. Right. So I've got 3 kilos here. Right, so I did that like relatively gently and you'll notice no stickiness, no residue on the outside of the bag. Actually, that was pretty clean. That's cool. I'm going to fold that up. I'm going to stick it back in that bag.
You're quite proud of yourself there, aren't you?
Yeah, I am, because that's the sort of thing that I normally make a complete hash of.
Right.
So, actually, normally we would add the malt extract to liquid rather than putting it into a relatively dry fermenter. This will dissolve and it will mix, and the very act of fermentation where it's boiling round as fermentation does will just break it all down. We will give it a bit of a stir.
Yep.
But yeah, so we're now ready to empty our kettle onto this.
Oh, what are you going to do? Do you want me to lift the kettle up? Or...
No.
No?
I've got a tap on the kettle, so we can just put the fermenter underneath it and draw it off.
Oh, well, that makes for good TV, doesn't it? But...
Yeah, okay, well, so it's in the wrong position. But if you were at home,
yeah,
it's going to be a 2-person job because you're going to have one person holding a sieve. If you're doing it in the saucepan that we were speaking about earlier, one person to hold a sieve, another person to...
Unless you've got one of those big catering style sieves that could sit over the top.
Oh, that would be beautiful for this job, wouldn't it? That would be the perfect tool.
Better get it on the floor then.
I am.
Right, and as whenever you're opening a tap on a kettle, gently does it, right?
Yeah, and also, like I said, I've got hot matter in here and I don't want to disturb the cone that I've made. And actually, I've got beautifully clear work coming out of there.
Well, I'm going to go grab the camera so everyone can see what you're doing.
Sorted.
Look at it, that's gorgeous, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it's really nice and clear. It's dark, James.
Yeah, but once we've diluted it down with some water, that's going to sort it out, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. James, I know that you've got the camera in your hand, but can you just double check that I've got the tap on off? The tap's not on. Otherwise I'm going to get wet feet.
Oh dear. Yeah. You're all right, it says closed.
It says closed.
Oh, you've gone in to stir it as well.
I have.
Important point, whilst Rob's down there, sanitise mash paddle, give it a really good stir to get it mixed up. Oh, Oh man, that smells wonderful.
No, I just that because we're using dry malt extract, it reminds me of that malted milk biscuit type aroma that you get. It smells absolutely amazing.
Yeah, Horlicks, Maltesers, all of those things. Yeah.
Right, at this point, I can start tipping the kettle slightly, but I'm going to keep an eye on it because I don't want. Well, I really don't want that trub in there.
Yeah, you want to minimise it, right?
Yeah.
It's worth noting as well, isn't it, that from start to finish, you know, we've been filming while we're doing this as well, so it takes a little bit of time, and we're doing 2 batches, but from start to finish, this is way quicker than all grain brewing.
Yeah, it's because you've missed out that complete mash. You've missed out that complete mash section.
Well, and the cooling as well.
Well, yeah. We're done. We've ended up with 7 litres volume in here.
Yep.
It's a 23 litre batch, so I need to top it up to 23 litres. I'm going to use cold water. It's water that's been treated with Camden
Sodium metabisulfate.
Which is really important because you never want to add anything with chlorine.
No.
Another thing would be to use bottled water, but we don't need to go to that expense. We can just treat the water. That's fine.
Especially because the sodium metabisulfate powder dissolves instantly. It's not like the crushing up a Camden tablet where you've got clumps and chunks and stuff. Yeah.
It's actually easier to use.
Yeah.
Right, let's top it up.
Oh, I'll go and fill the jug up, shall I?
Yeah. Get it in. James, sorted. All we need to do now is add the yeast. We're using saturated dry yeast.
Yep.
Nice and easy. All I need to do is chuck it in.
And you've checked the temperature as well, and it's absolutely fine. Adding that cold water's just brought it right in.
Exactly. I am gonna just mix that in.
Oh, controversial.
Yeah,
stirring the yeast.
Yeah, I know it's controversial, but that's what I'm doing. Today is all about experimentation, which is something I just love.
Right, I'll get the lid. And we're going to stick this on a heat mat, aren't we, with a temperature controller, just to keep it sort of at a steady, stable temperature. What temperature are you going to ferment it at? 20.
I'm going to ferment it at 20. Need an airlock, which I will sort right away. I'm also going to put a jacket on it, so I'm going to put the heat belt around it, and then actually use one of our Firmzilla jackets, because it's going to fit perfectly, and it's really highly insulating. That will do the job nicely.
Excellent.
I'll get the airlock.
Now, we're going to transfer my wort into a fermenter and add the liquid malt extract. But we have just discovered that I thought I was being clever, because we've got a new kind of valve assembly that we want to play around with on one of our Grainfather fermenters. But we are adding liquid malt extract into here, and it has a tendency to drop to the bottom and
kind of solidify around the valve.
Yeah.
And unlike the dry malt extract, it doesn't kind of dissolve during fermentation, because I have done exactly that, and I've completely jammed up the bottom of the fermenter.
Yeah, so we're going to have to pour this in incredibly slowly
whilst I'm thrashing it about with a paddle.
Yeah, and also, in my endeavour to try and be clever, that is too low to drain into there. So
that's why we've got this bucket on here. So that's
quite simple.
That's a simple issue.
Yeah. Now, this smells ridiculously good in here.
It does. It does smell good.
I'm absolutely over the moon with how it's done. Now, it isn't as clear as yours, but that's because it's like nearly 100 grams worth of hops.
Yeah, you wouldn't expect that to be clear.
No. So that's all good. Right. Now, our lovely warm pouch of liquid malt extract, I am literally going to take just a corner off of.
Right, while you're doing that, I'm going to wash and sanitise this again.
Ugh. Right, so your paddle's sanitised?
Yes, it is.
Now, we've brought a camera over here, so hopefully you're going to be able to see kind of how we're approaching this. So, lid off. Gently, just move that fermenter back. Valve is off at the bottom.
Oh, you're risking that, aren't you? Yes, nice.
Yeah. Nice and gentle. Start opening that up. And then my liquid malt extract I'm gonna start really.
Personally, I wouldn't be putting that in yet until there's a bit more liquid in there, James. But you know, it's your beer.
Right, I'm just gonna speed up the flow of this malt extract a little bit.
Actually, the way that we've done this brew, which is completely and utterly different to the way we've brewed for such a long time, it's been a real bit of nostalgia, really.
Oh yeah, both
looking
of us.
back.
Yeah.
And there are loads of different ways that you can make extract brews, and there'd be loads of different improvements that we can make. But going on our experience, we know that these beers can be made really quickly, doing exactly what we've done, and turn out really good drinking beer.
And I'm enjoying playing my malt extract bagpipes. I'm not actually sure we said how much malt extract we're using. So you used 3 kilos of dry malt extract and I'm using 3 kilos of light liquid malt extract. Thank you, I just dribbled.
Yeah, and obviously the dry malt extract is stronger for any given weight because you've got no water to account for. The difference is actually 20%. So that's the end of our brew day. We've got both beers into the fermenters. It's been great fun.
Yeah, really nostalgic and actually so easy, other than my little bit of consideration with fermenters and stuff. But I'm really excited to see how the beers turn out. Now that oil for the neck clone, I brewed it a number of times and I know what the all grain version tastes like. So really excited to see what this version of it is going to turn out like.
Funny thing is that brewing is different for different people. So, you know, we probably haven't brewed competition-winning beers that are like gold medal standard, but brewing's not always about that. Sometimes I just want to brew a beer that I'm proud to share with my mates, and that's exactly what we've done there.
Yeah.
And learn a load on the way. It's just been really good fun, and that's what it needs to be.
And because this is going to be full grain extract to glass, you're going to get to see how the beers turned out in a minute after fermentation. So see you in a moment. So by the power of video editing, it is now a couple of weeks later, isn't it, Rob?
Yes.
And we're sat here with the first of our 2 beers that we made using entirely extract. Which one's this?
This is it's basically a landlord clone. So we've taken our landlord kit and we've replaced the base malt with malt extract.
Yeah. And how was fermentation for everybody looking at watching at home?
I did it in the most simple way possible. So I fermented it in one of our plastic malt miller fermenting buckets with a tap on the bottom. I put it on a heat mat, put a firm zilla jacket around it actually because it fitted really nicely. So I did that and it fermented out quickly. It was done within a week. Left it for another couple of days at a slightly lower temperature.
Yeah.
Then I took everything off it and let it cold crush in our warehouse, which is freezing at the moment. So it's probably ambient temperature in here probably at the moment is like 8 degrees, I should imagine, something like that. And there's been big temperature fluctuations as well because it's an ambient warehouse.
Yeah.
But I took no more care of it than that. The day before I kegged it, I put it up on a higher bench so that I didn't have to disturb it too much when I'm kegging it, and I kegged it again in pretty much the most simple way. I connected silicone hose to the tap that's on the bottom of the fermenter, and I did actually fill it through the beer out of
through the dip tube.
Through the dip tube. So there's a bit of jiggery pokery converting silicone tubing into 3/8 beer line, but I did manage to fill it down the dip tube to keep it as gentle as possible.
Yeah, and we added brow salt to the keg as well.
Yeah.
So that we could do a bit of fining as well.
Exactly, because it was only actually kegged last night. So today is Friday. It was only actually kegged Thursday evening.
Yeah.
And I wanted it to be as clear as possible. This will drop clearer in the keg over the next couple of days. I also used my very unscientific, very non-patented carbonation method, which is to add about 40 psi of positive pressure on the keg and then shake the bejesus out of it.
You were, yeah. No footage, unfortunately, of Rob shaking the keg, but
Now-
we've all seen it before.
Now that is completely unscientific, I know, but it's a method that I've used for a long time and it works perfectly for me. And that's one of the great things about homebrewing. Work out what works for you and crack on with it.
Well, should we dive in and see what we think of this landlord clone? Yeah?
Yeah, just before we just do that, James, there's just a few bits and pieces I want to finish off with. So if you ever put not crystal clear beer into a keg, obviously you're not going to get crystal clear beer out of the keg. However, I was really super gentle with the keg. It went into a fridge and then stayed there overnight. I then tapped the keg and basically got rid of the first, I think, 2 litres out that keg. Wasteful on beer.
Yeah, but if you weren't under the pressures of video release schedules,
Well, it would be a totally
yeah,
different.
just
would
leave
be
it for a
totally
bit
different
longer,
thing.
right?
Yeah.
Right, let's dive in and have a look. So, cheers. Now, first off, yeah, it's not entirely pin bright, but it's not far off it now.
No, and experience tells us that actually it will completely clear.
Yeah, really nice colour though. Really nice
It's a
colour.
lovely colour, and the colour matches what would be the all grain kit.
Yes. Yeah, and the head is a lovely colour, slightly off-white, comes back. The lacing on the glass sticks around as well.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah,
It's
it's going for a smell. Get the
Yeah.
nose in.
Do you know? It smells like a pub pint, James.
It does.
It smells exactly like a
smells
pub
fresh,
pint. It smells fresh.
Yeah. Right, let's go
Yeah.
in for a sip. Robert, that is delicious.
It's good. You know, it tastes like it's a bit cold. It tastes like a pub pint.
Yeah.
You know, and that is kind of what I was after producing. You know, like drinking beer.
Yeah.
Drinking beer. That's what I wanted.
I mean, it's a good candidate for something to be hooked up to a beer engine, right? If you've
Oh
got one.
mate, honestly, that would be great through a beer
Yeah.
engine. Right. So the crucial thing, though, is what I really want to get to is, can we tell the difference between this being made out of extract and grain as opposed to an all grain kit? And I think yes, you can. There's a slight lack of body now. Remembering that this was only kegged last night, and again, experience tells us that even just a few days in the keg brings body back into a beer, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. I think, though, that a lighter body actually makes it a bit more sessionable. It's by no means thin.
Oh, crikey, no.
It really isn't thin.
No.
I actually think there's a lovely balance of malt sweetness in there, some toffee notes, a little bit of caramel, some fresh fruity notes as well, probably from the yeast.
Yeah.
We know that saturated yeast can drive some of that stuff.
Yeah.
And hey, actually, in summary, I think if this was a recipe that you'd made as your first attempt of maybe moving from kits to partial mash,
there's absolutely the difference between this and a sticky beer kit. There is no comparison.
should move on to mine.
Yeah, we've got a few things to talk about on James's.
Please forgive me, Father, for I may have sinned.
So this is an absolute case of trying to rush things through when some things just can't be rushed.
No, I know, like two forces fighting against each other, video release schedules, me being away for a couple of days, and
I did arouse the hops when
you did rouse the hops.
Yeah, I did, yeah.
But we've ended up here with a beer that's got quite a bit of hop matter still knocking around in it after kegging. Now,
in fact, so much hop matter that you actually bunged up the outpost on your keg, James.
Yes.
Which has caused us all sorts of hassles this morning, taking keg posts off a keg that is already carbonated and general mucking about.
yeah, okay, thanks for that. That'll be going on my review then. Anyway, right, so we do have a slightly soupy glass of beer that we're going to have to dodge the hop matter that's knocking around in it, and it isn't as clear as I would like yet, but equally it's not unpleasant looking at all.
Equally, it was also keg last night as well.
Yeah, I mean,
And actually, one of the really interesting thing is we all mess up from time to time, and or don't allow enough time and have to do something really quickly or whatever. There's quite often ways around it, as long as you don't oxygenate your beer at that point.
Yes.
There's quite often ways around it. So this one, I would suggest that we'll probably swap it from keg to keg, give it a load more days in the cold so everything drops out as much as possible.
Yeah.
And swap it from one keg to another.
Yeah, maybe when we do that, pass it through bounce filter as well at the same time.
Yeah.
But, you know, these things have happened. It's not the first time I've had this happen to me. It's not the first time I've had to take a keg post off and clean it out because I've blocked it with hot matter.
Actually, funnily enough, this does bring in, so we're using corny kegs for this with a dip tube that goes right to the bottom. A lot of people are now using floating dip tubes, either in their corny kegs or more likely in some type of PET
Yeah, like
keg
an oxybar.
fermenter. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And actually, this is one of the great advantages that system does have, because you're drawing off clearer beer at the top of the keg.
And they've got the mesh filter on them as well.
And they've got the mesh filter, yeah. Cool.
But let's try and put aside the fact that there are
mistakes have been made,
that there are things floating in the beer, and let's see what we can do to assess it. So first off, colour wise, yeah, for neck oil it would ideally be a bit brighter than this, but I think
you'd never drink neck oil as fresh as this.
No. And colour wise it is absolutely gorgeous, really pale, really nice, kind of bright and vibrant. We've not oxidized it, thankfully. And
it's about the only thing oh no, sorry, that's unfair.
He's a cruel mistress.
I tell you what I will say, both the extract beers here that we've been testing, the head's been fantastic.
It's really good.
It's really good.
Yeah, tons of head retention.
Yeah.
Nice creamy, white, tight bubbles on there as well.
Come on then, first things first, sniffing. Right, so we've also got an issue there, haven't we, James?
Yeah, it smells of hops and sulphur.
And sulphur.
Yeah,
you know, it's like a beer from Burton.
One of the things that we had, which I've never experienced before with the yeast strain we used, was throughout fermentation, actually tons of sulphur coming off.
It was a bit eggy around here, wasn't it?
Yeah. It has definitely diminished.
Yeah.
And this has been poured for a few minutes now, and even in the time that it's been poured, it's diminished. And actually, the aroma I'm getting out of the glass now is more hops than sulphur. And we know that will diminish over time as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that, you know, the big thing is with this is time would have solved most of these issues.
Yes, yeah. Should we go in for a taste?
Oh.
Cheers.
Got a toothpick. Okay, I only got a tiny bit. I only got a tiny bit of hot matter. I think it's got a slight amount of hop burn, James. And again, that's another thing. You know, it's basically it's too fresh for drinking. You know, it's actually
should be now conditioned.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. And it tastes like beers do when they're not quite ready. I've got a not a massive amount, but there's a small amount of hop burn there. We know that will fade away.
It's definitely not unpleasant from a flavour point of view. I am actually getting a ton of hop presence. The dry hop on this is quite big. You know, I think it's Centennial, Simcoe, and Vic Secret.
Yeah, and also, so I was talking about rousing the hops a little earlier. So we actually fermented yours in a Grainfather conical fermenter with a new addition.
Yeah, more on that soon.
Yeah, so it means that we can dump yeast material and, funnily enough, hop material easier, but it also means I can put gas, CO2, straight on the bottom of the fermenter, force CO2 back up through it, bubble all those hops back into suspension, which is a very good trick to get even more hop profile out of those dry hops.
But again, I think if this were the first attempt I'd made at doing a partial grain kit with extract, I'd be really pleased with it.
Absolutely.
Really pleased. Yes, there's some things that are on me, and I could take full responsibility for that. Things don't always go to plan. But I know that give this another week.
Actually, it'll be a totally different beer.
And even if we did nothing and just left it in the same keg for a week.
Yeah.
You know, we draw the first pint or so off to get rid of some slurry and make room around the dip tube.
Yeah.
And actually, we'd be drawing much brighter beer and it would have freshness, but not green hop burn.
I think that we've proved that you can make really good beer without having to boil extract.
Yeah, and without having loads and loads of equipment, you know. So if you really want to go from making beer kits and have a go at, you know, getting a bit more involved with recipe development, taking an existing recipe and, you know, switching out the base malt for malt extract and, you know, doing it in your kitchen on your stove with very little extra equipment, you really can. And I'd really encourage anybody that at the moment is brewing solely beer extract kits to have a go at this. It's not much more in the way of process and time, and actually the results you can get are absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, and the difference between this beer, my beer, and a sticky beer kit, it's amazing difference.
Yeah.
Actually, this has been like a really enjoyable experience, going back to our roots of home brewing and really enjoying that back to basics nature of it has been really, really good. And as ingredients carry on improving, we'll keep going back and using those new improved ingredients in ways that we have used them before, and just seeing what you can do at home on the more basic equipment is really important. Even as a brewer who's got lucky enough to have access to pretty much any brewing equipment that we like, it's been an excellent experiment.
It really has. I'd love to have a go next time with the Muntons Craft Your Own series.
Yeah, that's next year.
You know, using the oats and the wheat extract and blending that with a pale malt extract as well, and seeing if I can turn some form of a really credible New England style, either delicious pale or IPA, and obviously not make the mistakes that I did this time. Now, we'd love to hear from you, whether it's just advice you've got for me on how to not make these kind of mistakes in the future, or if it's questions you've got or thoughts you've got on any of the processes that we've shown you in this video. We've really enjoyed it, haven't we, Rob? It's been great fun. And as ever, if you are not already subscribed to our channel, please do subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, give this video a thumbs up, and make sure that you follow us on Facebook, Instagram, X, and also TikTok. Now, as ever, have a great brew.
Cheers.